Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Walk With Me, the podcast. I'm your host, Marie-Eve Bédard, and I'm so blessed, filled with gratitude, excited about the conversation that I will have today with Lisa over here. Lisa is an incredible woman that I have watched for the longest time evolve and go through life through different phases. The reason why that is, it's because she is my great cousin. So she's my mom's cousin. Her mother is my grandfather's, my maternal grandfather's sister. And I invited her today because I think that she has such an incredible perspective on life, just because of her experiences, but also because she's just an incredible person. And I am so blessed to have you and welcome Lisa today.
Mm. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm very grateful to be here as well. It's always lovely to connect with my mom's side of the family, only because I grew up in the United States versus Canada. So it's always great to talk, with family. Makes me feel closer. And I don't know if I deserve the introduction that you gave me, but thank you. Thank
We're
you.
all deserving. The reason why I say this is because I remember so your mom fell in love with an American. She actually moved
Mhm,
to the United States. So you were born in the
mhm,
United
mhm,
States. I come from Canada. And she has an interesting life story.
mhm,
She's just a powerhouse, courage,
mhm,
trailblazer. She's just
mhm,
and I think that it is very indicative of a lot of women in her family. So that's actually really cool. And
mhm,
this, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, if you're listening to that on YouTube, it's actually part of a bigger project that I have to kind of talk to a lot of women in my family and to bring forward the legacy and the power and the wisdom of our feminine collective. So that's actually really, really cool. And one day I hope to have you, mom, on the podcast. And it's a bit of a context because you just said you were born in the United States.
mhm,
You were far from us back in Canada. And I
mhm,
remember when I was a child, we were going down to Florida. And I must have been 4 or 5 years old. I have such incredible memories of you and I. I felt like a princess when I was with you. It was just and I remember that your mom was sending packages as well, to
mhm,
us, and every time we were getting a package, it was kind of like it was like this little threads, what I call it, threads of tenderness that
mhm,
link us together, even if we're not at the same place, even if we're not present in a consistent daily or yearly matters. And she has been with me, in one of the big part of my life. She actually came down to, just so a little bit of context here, she came to Montreal and she actually walked with me. I was doing a breast cancer
mhm,
awareness walk, raising funds, and she came to walk with me, and it was just incredible because she was already at that point 73 or 74
mhm.
years old. So to give you a little bit of context of who your mom is and who you grew up with, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
like, I mean, she's still walking today, like 10,000 steps. Pretty amazing. Um, so she moved to the States before she met the American and fell in love. But yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's been it's been quite it's different, right? I believe I think I'm the only one from the family that was born in the States. I
I
believe
think
so.
so.
I think
Yeah.
she's the only one that left Canada. And so it was always really hard for me, all of my family being what felt so far away, right? From South Florida to Canada.
Montreal.
Right, for sure. And I remember when we would go visit, first of all, your grandfather was like, I won't lie, like, kind of my favorite. I know we shouldn't have favorites, but he was so great. I loved Augie.
Oh
But
my God.
but you were, I remember you specifically very clearly because you were so flippin' cute. I mean, to be honest, and we just, Marie-Hélène and I just always wanted to play with you. As like, for me, it was like, oh, look, a little baby sister that I never had, you know? But yeah, growing up in the United States, a very different experience. And my mom, who still spoke French in the house, apparently I spoke French when I was little, but then like you go off to school and English is the language. So it's like what you practice every single day. But yeah, very different experience. Family, um, it's just myself, my mom, and my dad here. And then everyone was so far away, which again is like why I love the fact that you asked me to talk with you, to walk with you, because, you know, getting getting the opportunity to speak and to spend time with anyone from the Khmeri side is such a blessing.
For
So,
sure. I just love this. So your father didn't have is it because your father didn't have a big family or it's just it was different?
it was well, so my dad was an only child as well. So I'm an only
Okay.
child, my dad was an only child, and my parents were older when they had me. Not so it's so maybe today it's not considered older, but in the 70s, it was definitely considered older to have a child. My dad was 47 when I was born, but most of his so it was him and mom and his dad. Like, I have an extended family, but I really don't know them very well. Um, and really, like, I wasn't brought up I wasn't brought up near family,
Mm,
right? So you were brought up with all of your aunts and uncles and cousins within close proximity.
mhm.
I was not. And again, that's not an excuse for not going to visit family, but as a child, you're kind of mm, resigned to what your parents do, what you're doing. I was not at like 5, I wasn't able to like pick up a suitcase and be like, "Hey, I'm headed to Alabama to see extended family." So, yeah, it was just different. I always felt a little bit like an island. Um,
Mm, I can see that.
for not good or bad, just
No.
it is, it is what it is. But yeah, my dad didn't have he didn't have, I didn't have like aunts and uncles on my dad's side or anything like that.
So you basically had this microcosmos with your
Mhm.
parents, right?
Mhm.
So which leads me to my next, part of the conversation, which is you just mentioned that your parents were older than the regular people were having kids in
Mhm.
their 20s and the
Mhm.
70s, which means that he passed away when you were, I think, 9 or 10, is
No,
that
no, no, no.
correct?
No,
No,
I
you
was
were older.
29. I was
Okay,
29. Yeah.
okay.
But I still felt like, I think there's a period, so you grow up thinking like mom and dad are invincible, right? And
Mhm,
there's a point, and I think if everyone thinks about it, they can recall the moment that they saw their mom or dad is not mom and dad, right? Is like not a parent as a
human being.
legit human, a human being, right? Like someone that like lived a life like you're living your life.
Mhm,
And so I felt very young at 29 to lose my dad because I still saw him as daddy,
mhm.
not as like guy. Guy O'Rear was his name. So like as a guy who, no pun intended, a guy who like met a woman, fell in love, had a kid, like worked a job, had relationships. I saw him as like as like my daddy, like the one who I went to when I had a problem or would fix things or whatever. So,
Mm, it's actually I lost my mom passed away when I was 27, so I
mm-hmm,
can so relate to that.
mm-hmm,
And I always tell this story that, my mom I'm an only child as well, right?
mm-hmm,
So, and even if I was close to the family, like it was my mom and I were a bubble. Like we were
mm-hmm,
literally like a bubble from the get go. I have so many souvenirs of her rocking me in the rocking chair. She her own journey of like the swinging and the rocking has healed her, and she actually kind of embraced that with me. And she rocked me up until maybe 6 months before she passed away. Like, I was
mm-hmm.
26 and my mom was still rocking me.
It's okay.
And
I love that.
it's interesting because it's that movement of, that kept me, but it doesn't matter, like, I was 26 and I was still her child. I still felt like we had so much, like you were saying, like, we had so much more that was coming, and when, the disease happened, when she had cancer and all
Mhm,
that period of time before she passed away, it was kind of a shock, just like because you expect people to have health problems when they're in their 70s or 80s, not when they're 49 years old, right? Or 50
correct.
years old. So I can relate to that time of your life where you still
Mhm,
need your parents. You're still, like, figuring out what this life is, what it means to be an adult, and
mhm,
then they just leave you. So I'm just curious to see how that kind of unfolds afterwards when at 29 years old, you lose your dad, which is your pillar, right? Like, he was kind of
mhm.
like, mhm,
Well, if your dad's your first experience with a male
mhm,
in the world, right? The first, if you're lucky enough to have a daddy, it's like the first, with like your first experience with a male figure. Um, and and I'll be honest, like I was a wreck.
mm,
I was not prepared, and not that anyone is ever prepared, and it's just I was a mess. I like so so 3 months, 3 months, 2, 3.5 to 3 months before my father passed away, I had left my first marriage. So I was already a mess from that, and then to have that unexpectedly happen, and the situation around my father's death was very, very. For me, it was extremely traumatic, and I was just I went off the deep end. I think I regressed from 29 to like 19. I went through this rebellious stage where to be fair, I drank very heavily, partied like I'd never. I mean, it was, and I always joke like I went off the rails. But And it took a little bit of time to get back from that point. So I think maybe like when I finally, like around 31, I settled down a bit and I was like, you have to, like, you're not the only person in the world to ever lose a parent, and you won't be the last. Um, you have to like figure out how to move on. Cause I remember the first thing I said when I found out that he had passed away, I was like, I can't even imagine living in a world without my dad. And for all your listeners, I was 100% a daddy's girl. So it took a little bit of time to find my footing again, um, to figure out a way forward, which,
mhm,
I mean, I don't know what that says about me, but it was quite challenging. And when you experience things after, and you can relate to this, when you experience things after a parent's passing, it's always this, oh, I wonder what they would have thought about this, or I'm so sad they didn't get to see that. Like I think one of the things that I like that breaks my heart is that my dad never got to meet my husband now. because I feel like they would have gotten along so well, and it would have probably put my dad at ease knowing that I was with someone who that takes such
Mhm,
good care of me,
mhm.
right? Because as a daddy's girl, it was like no one was ever gonna be good enough. So, and I wish that my father would have seen that. But just going back, there's always, you have moments of like firsts in your life that they don't
Mhm.
get to see. And, that's it's hard. But I will say that I am so grateful that I had at least 29 years with my dad, because some people don't get that. So, you know.
It's interesting how I think that it's a grief that we don't talk much about, like well, first, there's not a lot of grief that we talk openly. I remember one of my colleague, I don't know, it had been like 10 years after my mom passed away, and I was still, grief takes time,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's a lifelong things, like, and people think that I remember, like, when my mom passed away, I was like, okay, like there's 5 stages of griefs. How much time? And I was
Mhm.
questioning people that
Mhm.
had lost their parents, like, how much time did you spend in all of this? Like this logical kind of like way of like, I'm gonna box myself through this and like
Mhm.
shovel through. And then you realize that that's not how it works, right? But there's so much stigma around how grief should look like, that there's a big layer of shame that comes with how we live our grief, how we move forward, how sometimes like some little things are still, like triggering stuff, like
Mhm.
I remember like it took me years before I just stopped to have this. When something was happening, I just stopped having this compulsion to like, oh, I'm just gonna call my mom. And then like
Yeah.
it was 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And it's funny because 2 years ago, so my mom passed away 15 years
Mhm.
ago. 2 years ago, it happened. Like something, and we're like, I'm not even in Montreal anymore. I'm like in a totally different way. And something happened, and I had that fraction of a second that I wanted to call her, and I was like, this is weird. She's been gone for like 13 years.
Mhm.
So I think that we don't talk about those moments where, and then we go back to like, well, I've had 27 years, 28 years. But I can still be angry about the fact that I wasn't ready. Nobody was ready. Like
Mhm.
I wanted her to live all of these other things.
Mhm.
So the shame that we have about how we move through our grief is what I want people to talk more about, because it doesn't matter who it is, and it doesn't matter that it's in the normal way of doing where, your parents are supposed to leave before you, and you're supposed, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt and it doesn't take
Mhm.
time to heal from it. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And one thing that I know that comes with the loss of a parent, or with the loss of somebody, for me, like I know that when she passed away, there was things that I was like, should have done this like that way. I should have done
Mhm.
this that way. Like, and it's all like, it's that bag of guilt that comes with
Mhm.
also with that. But my last conversation with my mother personally was pretty enlightening, in the sense that we're like, after days of like being this in this kind of a haze, she had so much clarity and look at me in the eye and actually like told me something that kind of gave me the cue that she was gonna leave. But in your case, it was different. Your father left more suddenly, right? If I remember
Yeah, so
correctly?
yeah. Yeah, so I was living in North Carolina at the time, and he was in Florida. So, I remember specifically, so the last conversation I had with him, I was driving and it was pouring down rain. It was at night, and I can't remember if I called him or if he called me, not that it matters. But he wasn't himself, and he was talking in a way that, and I look back now and I know why I reacted and got angry. But as I'd mentioned a few months prior to that, I had my ex-husband and I had split, and he was, so for context, my ex-husband and I had split, and then now I'm on the phone with my dad, and he's telling me, "You're gonna be okay. I love you. Know that I've always loved you." That, almost like he knew something was gonna happen. And that was very upsetting for me. And instead of me becoming emotional, emotional in in the way of tears, or I got angry, it, it, it made me angry. Like, why are you talking this way? What do you mean? I don't understand. And I was like yelling at him to stop talking that way, that like it was scared. So I was scared, and I projected it as anger.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Stop talking that way. This is upsetting. Like, what are you talking about? I don't understand." And I remember, um, he was like, "I love you." And I was like, "I love you too. I gotta go." And I hung up. And again, I was driving in the rain. So I was a little anxious to get off the phone anyways. Don't talk on your cell phone when you're driving. Um,
Listeners?
so yes, listeners. So anyway, it was a Thursday evening, and my my pride wouldn't let me call him on Friday.
Mhm.
I was prideful. I was right. He was wrong. He shouldn't have been speaking to me that way. And again, he didn't even do anything wrong. He was just expressing how he felt, that he loved me. But for some reason, I didn't want to call him back on Friday, and I didn't. Went to work, did my thing. Saturday, he hadn't called me. And so I was like, all right, I'll give him a call. So I gave him a call. He didn't answer. I was like, well, goodness, he must be mad at me. He was like mad at me. And then on Sunday, I still hadn't heard anything. So I called him multiple times, and it just kept going to an answering machine. And I left probably like 7 or 8 messages. So then on Monday, still hadn't heard anything, and I was like, "Okay, this isn't like, he's been mad at me before, but this is not his style. He wouldn't This is something a kid would do, ignore
Mhm.
the phone call, ignore the messages. This is not something he would do." So so I went to work, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. And one of my friends was like, maybe call the police and have a wellness check. Have them do a wellness check. And I was like, well, that sounds crazy, but okay. So I did. And when I didn't hear anything for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, in my heart, I was like, something is really wrong. But but I couldn't bring myself to think the worst. I honestly, and this sounds, when you hear this, you're like, well, of course, Lisa, something's wrong. But like at the time, I just couldn't imagine that he would have died. Like,
Mhm.
that's wasn't even, you know.
In the
And so
possibility on the
no,
map, like
yeah, it wasn't even
whatever,
the
like
realm of
it's
possible.
no,
Like,
no.
yeah, I was like, no,
Exactly.
my dad's gonna live forever. Like, this.
He's lost in his phone in the ocean before anything else,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. It's so crazy. So I get a call, and this is interesting. I get a call from a gentleman, and he introduces himself to me. And he's like, I actually know your dad from church. And I was like, he was the responding officer who had found my dad. He
Okay.
had passed away. And so they estimate he had died early Sunday morning, like very early Sunday morning. But the and the cause was they think he had like a massive heart attack and like an aortic aneurysm. And I just remember, like, I look back now, at the moment I was like hysterical. I was like screaming and yelling and what? I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying to me. But I look back and I'm so grateful that it was someone that actually knew my dad, that actually knew him, went to church with him every Sunday, like knew him. I found a lot of comfort, like years later, found comfort in that. But the fact that the last conversation that I had with my dad wasn't rainbows and unicorns, it was me yelling at him because I didn't like that he was talking about, I would be okay without him one day. And like, it's heartbreaking for me to know that the last thing he heard from his little girl was basically to shut up and to stop talking in such a way that was scaring me. But it's taken, so, like, yesterday was 19 years that he's been gone. And, going back to what you said, the days around the date of loss are like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just this, like, it feels almost like impending doom, like that they're going to have to go through that date every year for as long as you live. But yesterday was actually the first time that I didn't really cry. Like, I typically have, there's something throughout the day that brings me to tears, but I am so sad to know that that's the last time I ever spoke to him, that I spoke to him that way. So it's taken a while to get to the point where I know he knows that I loved him, right? We all have arguments with people that we love, disagreements, and I think it's really important to always remember that you just don't know, right? You don't know when the last time you're going to speak to someone. You don't know if the last time you speak to someone is the very last time.
Mhm.
So it's been a life lesson that I feel I'm grateful to have learned because I do my very best every time I talk to someone to leave the conversation in a good place. And if it's not, to very quickly follow up, um, which, it is definitely a trigger for me. Like, so if I ever can't get a hold of somebody, it's very triggering to me. Like,
Of course.
why don't you pick your phone? Where have you been? Like, especially like with my mom or with my husband, like people that I love and care about. Like, if I can't get in touch with you, I almost get, people would probably be like, well, you're nuts. You're insane. Like, I become like incessant. It's like an obsession that I can't deal with. Like, I can't deal with not being able to get into contact with someone because I'm fearful that something's happened.
Well, I mean, that is your brain actually operates on past experience, so it's very
Mm,
understandable. And that I just love what you just said because I was thinking about that when I saw your story yesterday about the fact that it was 19 years that you left, the last conversation that you had with your father was not the best conversation that you've had. I mean, we can rationalize everything, like, he knew
mhm,
that, but it still is something that you're like,
mhm,
you know?
mhm,
And which leads me to, like, your point of saying, like, I'm trying in all my interactions, especially with the people that I love, to leave the conversation in a way that is, even if we're in disagreement on anything, that they know that we still love each other, right? That
Mhm.
it's not because we have different points of view, different perspective, different ways of
Correct.
lifestyles, whatever the choices that we make in life, that we disagree or don't disagree, that we are holding this relationship in love. And
Mhm.
that's where I think that it's important to know that it's okay to disagree with the people that we love, and
Absolutely.
we can do both. We can actually say, like, I disagree with you. I don't want to leave any conversation, like, because sometimes we just need to just take a step back, do some
Correct.
spaciousness, come back to a place that we're more grounded, that is more constructive, right? Because we all have emotions, we all have, like, all these things, but to always know that when we're leaving the conversation, especially when there's the conversation that is, like, more heated,
Mhm.
that we're leaving it where if something were to happen, that they still know that we love them, even if we don't disagree, if we disagreed. So that's one thing that it got me thinking yesterday, when I
It's
saw
so
your story.
important. It's so important, and I think especially today, there's so many things that can divide us. There's so look, your decisions are your decisions, my decisions are my decisions, my beliefs are my beliefs, your beliefs are your beliefs, and while you might want me to believe what you believe, and I might want you to believe what I believe, that's pride, right?
Yeah.
And like when we have pride, sometimes it overtakes us. And we have to remember that, like, even so, I feel that the art of discussion, communication has really been lost today, in that, like, you and I can have, like you said, we can disagree on how we live our lives, our belief system, but it doesn't mean that I don't care for you or that I don't love you. You can disagree with people. They're not exclusive. You can do both. And I think it's just really important to remember that even though discussions might get heated, or you might disagree with somebody, I think it's really important, first, to do it respectfully, but second, to never let the person feel as though that they're not that they're not respected or loved. I just go back to that night on the phone, and there's so many things that I would do differently, knowing what I know now. But yeah, it's been a hard lesson to learn.
How much do you think it contributed to your down spiral afterwards?
Oh, I mean, I think it 100% was the reason. I think that maybe if I had had a different conversation and then losing him, it might have been an easier pill to swallow, you know? Um, I just was so angry. I remember thinking that I was angry, hindsight's 2020, angry at the loss of my dad, for the loss of my dad, just like you were angry for the loss of your mom at such a young age. But I think I was more angry, like, the circumstances,
Mhm.
which I created.
Have you since then done any forgiveness
Oh,
stuff?
yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah. So,
what has and so I'm curious to know what has helped you so the listeners can actually have, like, because I have tools when I work with women in my spaces, but I just love how when we have a conversation around this where we have real life,
mhm,
testimonial of what has helped you through
mhm.
that, through the forgiveness of yourself, that's basically
Of
what it
course.
is, right?
So, first, I think, so the first route that I took was, like, therapy, right? I did lots of therapy to talk through just my actions.
Hmm.
I think, and it was helpful. It was very helpful to be able to talk to someone who wasn't involved, right? Because your family or your friends are going to be like, oh, it's okay, Lisa, right? We all have arguments. And like, it's kind of like the luck of the draw here, right? You didn't know it could happen to anyone, but it didn't make me, that's not,
No,
that did
because
nothing
you're
for
not
me. Right.
validating your feelings, right? Like, you're
Right.
not
Well,
being seen, you're not being heard,
right.
it's kind of like,
Also too,
"Let's lift this rug and put it
yeah,
under."
yeah. But also too, it's like still your experience, right? So
Mhm.
someone can tell you like, "Oh, Marie-Eve, I don't want you to feel that way," but that's not gonna change how you feel. Like I can appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate you saying that, but that's not gonna help me at night when I mean, I don't know about you, but for a good solid year, had like super vivid dreams of my dad and of me driving in that car, talking on the cell phone, yelling. Like, again, that might sound crazy to like your listeners, but
But it's all about
the
unresolved trauma that was coming back
correct.
in from your through the gates of your
Mhm.
dreams from your
Mhm.
unconscious, right? Like,
Mhm.
so yes.
And so the therapy helped a bit to be able to step out of the scenario and be able to talk to someone who again wasn't involved. And then I think for a long time I just kind of like ignored it, if that makes sense. Like I think about it and kind of just like push it to the side. I don't have time to think about that right now. I don't have, but when you don't think about things, or you don't address things, we all know like they continue to rear their ugly head. Like it continues to come up over and over and over. And that anger that you might express or those tears that you might have shed, and you're like, I don't know why I feel this way right now. Like, why do I feel this way? It all comes from a place. So eventually, my faith is really what my faith in God is what really changed everything because like my belief and my dad's belief was, in Jesus Christ and knowing that my dad is in heaven and that I'm going to see him again one day just really put me at peace in that I'm already forgiven, right? Like I know that. So for me, it was like, oh my gosh, when I would pray, like, God, I'm so sorry. Like, how did someone who meant so much to me go leave this earth, maybe thinking that the only thing he'd ever spent all of his time and resources on was me. And I was like, I sounded like I hated him in that conversation. So knowing that I'm going to see my dad again, knowing that like God is forgiving me. And over the years, and maybe you've experienced this, I have definitely had comforting dreams about my dad. I remember the most vivid one, and I woke up crying, which I've never done before in my life, was a dream where he looked at me and he reached out, he took my hand and he's like, I'm okay. It's okay. I'm okay. That was like, I mean, oof. Uh, but just knowing that I'll see him again, and that's my belief, right? Like that he's in heaven
Mhm.
and that I will see him again has given me such comfort. And if you knew my dad, he was so kind and he was so funny, but he was always so quick to forgive me. uh, that I can't imagine that scenario, if I had been able to get in touch with him the next day or the day after, that he wouldn't have forgiven me, right? Like
Of
it's
course, yeah.
so so I think that, you know, the hardest part of this whole thing, right? And I think and you, your listeners most people can relate is forgiving yourself.
Mhm.
If you and I got into a disagreement, you would probably forgive me quicker than I would forgive myself. And I think that is what that is what most people struggle with. But that's just my perception and just been my experience is that they can't forgive themselves.
Or really hard. It's been my experience, like, as a human being, but it's
Mhm.
also been an experience as someone that actually accompanies people, and we are like 100 folds harder on ourselves than other people
Ugh,
are on ourselves. And this
always.
is where, and we are, the brain is actually like a really interesting machine where, and especially in grief, where grief is a magnifier for everything. So when we are like in this loop under a magnifier glasses and we're literally like whipping ourselves
Mhm.
for basically being human in a circumstance that was actually like just one thing out of like a big complex. And it's not because like some behaviors don't have to be addressed, or some behaviors but at the same time, like, we have to remember that there's circumstances that we're reacting to. And I just can't imagine you like being in this conversation with him, and I could just see feel me. You mentioned Henri. I'm sorry, I'm actually going in a lot of
Oh,
direction
yeah.
here, but you
No, no,
mentioned
no.
Henri.
Yes.
And my grandfather, like, this is one of the example that, which is a simple example, but I used to I used to be super close to my grandparents. Actually, at some point in my life, I was closer to my grandparents than my own parents. And I never left my grandfather, Henri, without saying
Mm,
him that I love
mm,
him. And the last time I saw him, it was the only time that I can remember not saying to him that I loved him, which is kind of interesting because he died on Christmas Day, right?
mhm.
And he used to call all of his brothers and sisters on New Year's Day to tell them
Yes.
Happy New Year. And that year, he actually did that he did that on the 25th. There are some,
Mm,
I think that we do have instances where where people feel that there's something coming up, and allowing that space to receive that conversation, we need to be ready. Like, we need to know what. So today you wouldn't have the same reaction just because in hindsight, you were saying in hindsight, but we cannot keep judging ourselves and not forgiving ourselves for not knowing what we didn't know. That's something that is, and that is, if it helps at all, people, like, we it's kind of cliche to say that we don't know what we don't know, but if you haven't had the experience to actually say, hold on a second, there's actually cues. And especially when it hits home very close, like, you love your dad, you don't want to envision your life
right.
without him. Like, it's not even a possibility. My mom was supposed to live until she was 80 something. Like,
Correct.
she was a camere. She was supposed to live
I
until
know.
she was 80 something. What the
God bless.
so
For sure.
exactly. So
For
it's
sure.
like, but at the same time, like, so, yes, I agree with you that we are, and it's a human behavior. It's
Mhm,
supernatural. And then when we acknowledge that, and we actually say, okay, hold on a second, like, I can shift this loop.
mhm.
Right? I can step out of the loop and, like, have so much love for that dynamic that I had with that person, and also for the dynamic that I have with myself, that I could not, like, I cannot you cannot ask somebody to be a certain way before they have had the lesson, which is kind of like, what looking at hindsight is, right?
For sure.
So,
I think
yeah.
it's, 2 things that you said, which are so spot on. So having the conversation. So at like 29, I was not ready. And it's interesting. So my having older parents, my parents have, I think earlier than most kids might experience, like had conversation, tried to have conversations with me. And I'll say this. not so much now, but back then in my 20s, about, if something happens, this is what you need to do. My dad had tried to do that. And I was like, get the hell away from me. Like, what are you talking about? Like, stop. This is, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it gives you this like ick kind of
Mhm.
feeling. So my dad had tried many times to have a conversation with me about like, if and, when I pass, like, here's where everything is. Here's what. And so you're right. Being ready to receive that conversation is hard, but it's necessary, very necessary. So when he was saying what he was saying on that night, the furthest thing from my mind was, I'm going to receive this conversation. I don't know where this is coming from and I don't want to hear it. Conversely, now my mom and I have had this conversation many times. Um, Although I'm never going to be prepared or ready, um, fully prepared or ready, um, I'm able to have that conversation with her now because I know for her, it actually brings her comfort to
Uh-huh.
know, to have like a plan, if you will. So that's like the first point. And then and to add to that, like to not be scared of that conversation, right? That when you're receiving it, like it brings up fear, right? Because again, I don't want to live without this person. Why are they talking this way? Um, but then the second is to we are our worst critic always, 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 always. And to forgive yourself is the greatest gift you can give yourself. Forgiveness. They often say when you're angry, when you hold anger for someone or whatever, like you're the person that's suffering.
Uh-huh.
You're the person that's suffering, not them. Because I guarantee you,
You're
I'm
drinking the poison.
correct. I guarantee you they're not even thinking about
Yeah.
whatever it made you angry.
Uh-huh.
You're the one. So the forgiveness is the greatest gift you can give yourself, to forgive yourself and to forgive others so that you're not living in this state of, I don't even know what it's called. My words escape me, but I think everyone can relate to when you're angry and someone, you just harbor that bitterness, like it grows and
And
it
it seeps
it does.
everywhere. It festers and it seeps
It
everywhere.
festers,
And
yep.
I just love that because you're not forgiving for the other person, and
No,
you don't have to condone the behavior
correct.
to have the forgiveness. You do it because it's part of your own journey of healing
Mhm.
and maintaining health, a healthy mind, a healthy
Oh,
heart, a
for
healthy
sure.
body, right? Like, because
Mhm.
otherwise it seeps in and it festers and it becomes all kinds of stuff in your body and in your
It
mind
takes
and in your heart.
and it literally takes over. It
Mhm.
takes over and if you've never felt that type of resentment or anger, God bless. I hope you never do. But for most of us, we've got something, and it's like you said, like, doesn't mean you forget, or you know, maybe that person. It's better off that that person isn't in your life anymore.
Mhm.
But for you to be able to move forward and to be of help, like of good health, like mind, body, and spirit, you have to forgive. And so, whether that's forgiveness extended to somebody else or yourself.
Absolutely. How I just mentioned something and it actually is it's now leaking in the next point that I wanted to share, which was your own event, your
Oh,
own.
yes. Yeah.
So your dad passes away at 29, and then what age were you when?
So I had my stroke when I was 34, so about 5 years. So so it was in April of 2011, April 13th, 2011. So just a little over 5 years.
And you had a stroke, you had a.
Yeah. So just to clarify, and I always like to clarify because so I had what's called a vertebral artery dissection, VAD for short. And that is, so you have four main arteries that run to the brain. You have two carotid, right? So the heart, and then you have two vertebral that run up the spine. And so my vertebral artery tore. So it, not by trauma. Well, so I didn't have, typically that happens like when you have like a blunt trauma, right? Like neck, like maybe car accident, or I don't know, you get hit really hard with an object. But so I had a vertebral artery dissection that caused a stroke. So I didn't have like a blood clot that traveled to my brain. I
Right.
had one that was created from the artery. So my artery was bleeding, and my body's like, oh, I have to stop this bleeding. I have to clot. And so the clot grew, and that's what caused the stroke. So I was 34. And what's interesting, just talk about, you had mentioned earlier about being seen and being heard. I had, so what happened is I had a reaction to a medicine, and it heart, caused me to have a tachycardia. So my heart rate went from like resting 50 to like 155 within seconds. That, and then it caused my blood, this is what caused the dissection, was my blood pressure went from, so I typically have like, I actually had pretty low blood pressure, like 100 over like 60. Um, that was from all the running I was doing. But my blood pressure went into like 200, the 200s over like 180 very fast. And so it's like into, so a good example would be is if you take a Coca-Cola bottle or you take a soda and you shake it up, right? Those bubbles, right? You shake it up and then you open it and it explodes. That's kind of what happened to me. That like it was such a shock to my system that like something gave. And so what we found later was that like I had a weakness in my neck, right? We all have weaknesses in our body, but we don't really know about them until something
Mhm.
happens. And
Mhm.
so I had a weakness in my artery in my neck, and it tore. So for 3 days, I was in the hospital, and I had all of these symptoms.
That medication, was it a new medication?
Yeah. So no, it was not a new medicine. So I went in for an endoscopy and
Okay.
a colonoscopy. And the reason I was in for the colonoscopy, you're like 34, that's so young. So we have a family history
Mhm.
of colon cancer. And so I was having some issues. And so the doctor was like, all right, we want to take a look. And since we're in there, two for one, we'll do an endoscopy as well and check out for your heartburn, indigestion. Cool. So the medicine that I was given is not a new medicine. 0.01% of people have reactions to it. You don't know you're going to have a reaction to it until that's because it's not like an Advil. Like it's not like an over the counter, right? So, which, you know, but I had a low heart rate, resting heart rate. I had a low blood pressure. And so at the time of the procedure, it's a call made by the anesthesiologist that, because what this medicine does is it increases both. The reason you want to increase it because when you're under anesthesia, typically your heart rate and your blood pressure will drop even more. So since I was starting out with a low heart rate and blood pressure to begin with, they decided to give this medicine to me. Within seconds, I knew, I mean, it was bells and whistles started to go off in the room. And I was in that hospital for 3 days, and every single doctor dismissed me. Oh, you're young. Oh, you're thin. You're just anxious. And that was, I think, that was the start of like another another type of trauma,
Mm,
for that
mm.
I'm extreme distrust of the medical community. And if anyone ever wants to talk about that, it's because of this, and it's because of this. So literally my job at the time, I'm paralegal, was I review medical records. I know the signs and symptoms of a stroke. I've known for years. And all I knew is nothing was getting better. I was in that hospital room, and every day I would wake up with a new symptom. Nothing they gave me was addressing anything. Nothing was helping. I was only getting worse. And then they let me go. They told me to go home. And part of me, I didn't want to go home because I knew something was really wrong, but I was exhausted. I didn't was exhausted. I was like, okay, well, if they tell me nothing's wrong, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe there's nothing wrong. I just have this ridiculous migraine that is like not like a typical migraine. One side of my face is drooping, but maybe that's normal for this type of migraine, like all of these things. And then that night, the next morning was just as awful as you might imagine. And then my now husband took me back to a different hospital, and immediately I was taken back. They did another brain scan. They did a spinal tap. They did all the things, and they were like, "You've had a dissect." So they never told me. It was interesting. They never told me I had a stroke. They were like, "You've had a dissection," and I'd never heard of that. And I was like, "Okay, how do we fix it?" I was just like, "Okay, now what?" Um, it wasn't until the next morning the doctor came in and was like, "So I see you've had a stroke," and I was like, "Are you sure you're in the right room? Because I don't." No, so when I was transferred up to the room, I had no idea what floor I was on. I didn't know that I had signs outside of my door that were like fall risk. I didn't realize I had no idea. And I was like, I think that you're wrong. I think you need to check your chart. But so that was, I think, so just going back to like nobody, I was telling them, but I have this, but I have this, but now I have this. I even asked at one point if I was having a stroke, and they just actually the resident laughed at me. And it was like, "Why do you think you're having a stroke? You're so young." And I'm like, "Well, I know I'm not a medical doctor, but
But I know my body.
I know my body, and something is really wrong, really wrong." So I'm very lucky to be alive in that if I had not gone back to the hospital, I was headed for I was headed for a coma. That would have been the next step in what was going on, because by the time I got back to the hospital, so I don't know if you've ever had a neurology test, but they will give you 3 words and they'll say, "Okay, I'm going to tell you 3 words. I need you to repeat them back to me." I couldn't remember the words. I was apparently I was slurring my words, didn't. But I just felt so dismissed, especially by people that were supposed to be helping me, or they said they were supposed to be helping me.
I just love that you're bringing this because what has been my experience, I've witnessed this. There is a long story culture of dismissal when it comes to the medical community. And
Mhm,
not that I want to open another door, because I think that this is a whole other conversation. But we have been told, especially as women, since we're very little, to kind of dismiss those things that happen as women that are normal, which are not normal. And now there's more and more people that are coming forward, advocated for better care and better understanding and empowerment in women, so they can actually understand and know that when they feel in your body, when you feel in your body that something is wrong and somebody is laughing at you, dismissing you, that is that is common in the medical community.
Mm.
Is like, that is your story, my mom's story. Like, dismissal is not singular.
Mhm.
That is the way that the medical community, and it doesn't matter if you're in Canada and it doesn't matter if you're in the United
Mhm.
States, that is the way that is that it's done, right? And which further, and this is where I find it interesting when people come to me, which further disconnects us with our body and the signs that the messages, the
Mhm.
crucial messages that our body is telling us that something is not right, that
Mhm.
something is not. And on the long term, we're so used to those aggressions that are not microaggressions, but because we've been moving through them so often, they
Mhm.
are microaggressions, but they're not micro in itself. They accumulate over time. And then we end up being so disempowered, and things happen that should not happen because it's not like we're hiding stuff. You were telling them, like, and you point blank asked them, like, am I having a stroke, right? And it's so traumatizing when you think about it, because they are supposed to be the ones that know and support you. And like, they're sworn oath. They're supposed to be there to help you find your way back to health. And I'm not saying that it's all the medical community. There's more and more doctors, and the new generation of doctors are being trained and being more compassionate.
Mhm.
There's a shift coming, and I've witnessed the shift. And I actually witnessed also here how it's different in Germany
Mhm.
than back in Canada. But if you're hearing this, listeners, and you feel like you are dismissed when you have symptoms, find an ally to go with you. Find somebody that actually will listen to you so you can feel heard, validated, because not everybody has a husband like you that said, "No, let's
Mhm.
go back to the hospital." Not everybody has a husband like me that
Mhm.
said, just last week, I actually was in and out of emergency and then clinics. And he actually said at some point, like, do you want to go back to the emergency or do you want to go back to the clinic? Which is the place that you felt that you were getting the best support, the best medical support, right? So this is something that we as women community need to talk more about, but also, like, take back the power, because it's not because they have degrees that they know more about you. You are the expert. You're the expert in your own body. And if this is the permission that you needed,
No.
please hear the permission. You are allowed to actually say, no, this is not, and leave the conversation, leave the doctor's office, leave the whatever therapist is that is making you feel like you're not being heard, seen, validated, and that you're especially invalidated. Oh God, especially
So
invalidated.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you have permission to say no. You have permission to get up and walk out. Prior to my stroke, I would have never ever canceled an appointment, canceled a doctor's appointment at the last minute. I would have never thought to get up and leave a doctor's appointment. It just honestly, to be honest, never would have occurred to me, which sounds insane, I'm sure. But
Mm-mm.
when you are typically we trust people, places, things until something happens, right? Something has to happen to cause a distrust.
Mhm.
And I remember when I had the reaction, they wheeled me back out, put me in like a recovery bay area, and started doing all kinds of like, they did tests on my heart, they ran blood work, all the things. And I say this to say this. I remember they brought Jason, my husband, back, and he wasn't my husband at the time, but he brought him back. They brought him back to sit with me. And the anesthesiologist had come into the room and said, "You're fine. We're going to take you back and try again." And I remember I just looked at Jason, and like you said, not everyone has a Jason, but we need to be able to do this for ourselves. I remember I looked at Jason and said, "If you let them take me back there again and try, I'm going to die. Something is going to happen. I'm not going to come back. You cannot let them try to do this procedure again. And he was like, he just looked at me like his eyes were wide. And he was like, okay, okay. And I was like, under no circumstances. But yeah, it's really hard to, well, I find it challenging to speak up for myself in general.
Hmm.
But when you're in a room filled with doctors, nurses, I mean, we could spend another podcast on how many times I was dismissed until I actually got the correct help. It can be intimidating. I was intimidated. I remember I just kept apologizing, right? Like, I'm sorry, this hurts really bad. I don't know. I'm not trying to be a pain in the butt, but I think I'm going to throw up. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just remember I just kept apologizing that I was causing all of the drama. But being able to advocate for yourself and speak up, even in those moments where it might feel the most scary or intimidating, are so important. And I wish that I wish that first day I'd had the presence of mind and I'd been able to at least express to Jason, like, we need to leave this hospital and we need to go somewhere else because something is seriously wrong. I can't walk on my own. I can't really see. I'm throwing, like, I have all of these symptoms and they're just trying to pump me full of morphine to make the pain go away. But guess what? The morphine isn't touching any of my pain, which I'm going to I'm going to guess is pretty bad. Like,
Hmm.
my body is trying to tell me something's not right here. You need to get, like, you need help. So, I mean, but it's, I don't know how to explain it, but it was just like I was just so fearful. Like, and maybe that's, says a little bit about like how we're conditioned. Don't speak up. Like, we don't want to ruffle any feathers or create waves. So maybe it's better to just stay silent.
And, they are the ones that are
Yeah, like
the
the MDs,
knowledgeable, right?
correct. Which there's no, I remember one of the residents like walking out of, so once they decided that I was too sick to continue, they took me down to the ER because they had to like register me to put me in a hospital room because I was only going in, remember, an outpatient procedure. One of the residents left the room and closed the curtain as if I wasn't going to hear. I heard her, I heard her say, she's so skinny. She's so thin and she's so anxious. I bet that's the problem. And I remember just thinking to myself,
I can hear you.
like, and also too, like, are you trying to tell me the fact that like, had a tachycardia, that my blood pressure was, that I made that up? Like, that's my anxiety did that? That just logically doesn't make sense to me. So, I mean, I would say to anyone, if you feel like something in your gut, if it doesn't feel right and it doesn't sit right, like, say something. And if no one is listening to you, then physically remove yourself from that situation and go elsewhere. I don't know if that would have changed the outcome for me, but I'm so grateful. I mean, not that this has been, that it was easy, but I'm so grateful for that really hard experience.
Absolutely. And I think that if we don't feel like the people are there to help us, that is not a collaborative
Mhm.
relationship because it is a collaborative.
Mhm.
If I have things that are linked to anxiety or whatever, let's talk about it, but don't go into an assuming whatever behind the curtains
Mhm.
and certainly not, like the conversation that sometimes they have because they're in the situation all the time and it's like another number, right?
Well, I feel like that's what they see, right?
Yeah.
So they see a 34-year-old relatively healthy woman, and all it's like they go from like there's like a checklist. Okay, well, she's probably not having a heart attack. She's probably not having a stroke because like her age, right? She's probably not having this. She's probably not having that. So then they just have all these different assumptions, and instead of like listening, like
Mhm.
listen to what I'm saying to you.
It
So
might be not in the statistics, but,
correct,
outliers
correct.
exist. And the statistic, which is based on science, scientific data, always has like, it's always like the mainstream part, but it doesn't mean that there's no outliers. So having that relationship with your doctor, with your therapist, with your uh, whoever it is,
Hmm.
it's interesting because I didn't know we're gonna have like that type of conversation, and I did a post this morning that was exactly that. Like, I don't care who it is. If you actually, and I don't care what their scoreboard is or what their like whatever. If you feel invalidated, leave.
Hmm.
You are the expert in your own body, in your
Hmm.
own life, in your own like. So that's why, and it circles back in some way to the conversation that we were having, where your choices are yours and yours only. And yes, we can have discussion, and yes, we can expand, and yes, we can actually
Hmm.
explore other territories, and we're invited to do so. But at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your belief, it's your lifestyle, it's your whatever. And nobody can tell you how to live your life.
So in my heart, I truly believe that we are all doing the very best that we can in this life. And
I believe so too.
we are trying to make decisions for like based upon our experience, based upon like what we know. We're all trying to make the very best decisions for ourselves, for our families, whatever. And I feel like if that resident had said to me to my face, "Hey, Lisa, I think that these could be contributing factors." They weren't, but if she had said it, "I hear what you're saying, and I think that these are contributing," it's a very different conversation than
Mhm.
just saying to somebody, "Well, this is how it is."
Yeah.
So, you know, I think, and going back to like judging ourselves, I judged myself for a really long time for that. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should, and my husband, the same. I should have immediately taken you to another hospital. I should have, like he had a lot of guilt and regret. But again, at the time, just with like every experience in life, at the time it's happening, I think we're all doing the very best that we can. And
I agree.
hindsight's 2020. And, and it comes back to like forgiving yourself. How do you move on? How do you take what's happened and do the very best with it?
I just love this
So,
because I'm not one of those people that believe that everything happens for a reason. For me, it's not. However, in every experience, there are lessons that we can extract for the future. And I think that that is where we're leading with, whether it's
um,
the conversation with your dad and how it impacted your dynamic relationship and how you actually love and connect with people since then. And also since your stroke or your
yeah.
medical event that impacted not only like how you built your relationship and how you advocate for yourself and how you talk about it, because you've been really vocal about it as well, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, and how it actually like to really change the way that I saw how it changed the way that you live your life moving
Mhm.
forward, right? Like, I just love like for the first year you did a 365 one
Yeah.
second.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So
I just
every day
like
you were filming
I
one
would try to like
second.
right, I would try to document something in the day, even if it was bad, like always. That's what I always find with like social media. Like you mostly find, and maybe not so much more today, but like initially, it's like always the good stuff. Always like, look at this and look how wonderful my life is. But we all know that that's not reality. So, yeah, I would try to document like one thing a day, just because I think one of the greatest lessons I learned, right, is life is short.
Mm,
You don't know. You don't know how quickly life will change, especially when it comes to your health. And, it wasn't on my bingo card at 34 that that was going to happen to me. Didn't have that in my line of sight. So, um, I think it's just, you know, you have to choose to want to find the lesson, if you will, in every experience. I don't know about you. I've even gone back to certain experiences in my life and gone, what should I have learned from that? Because I feel like I'm still trying to be taught that lesson, you know?
mm. Interesting. Yes, yes, of course. There are, and like I said, like I don't think that everything happens for a reason necessarily, but I think that when we look at different experiences or different like patterns that we have that emerge, that like I think that there are cues there that we can visit, transcend, and move on to the next level. Whether it's actually things that happen to us, whether it's actually things that are generational passing, right? Like, because, but that's actually yeah, I totally agree with you with that. So now you are now you were before we actually went online, you actually were sharing the fact that your mom now lives with you.
Hmm.
So your mom, who is she's 80, she's 87.
I know
She's a
the
Canary.
the Khmer genes. I'm telling you, it's pretty amazing,
So
especially
she's
like the women.
87.
Especially the
Yes.
women.
Yes.
I mean,
So she's 87 and she now lives with you, and you were sharing that, 25-year-old Lisa would have never thought that that would be the case. And I think that there's a interesting um you know, circle in
mhm.
what you were going to share about that. And I just
Yeah,
I
no,
just
I feel like I lost my dad at 29. I feel like I didn't have a lot of time with him, and I never really saw him as who, like, other than a dad. Never saw him as anything other than a dad. And I've had the experience now with my mom to see her as not just a mom, um, but as like a businesswoman, as an advocate for her health, as someone that like lives a daily life like myself. um, yeah, it wasn't like, again, not to use the same analogy, it wasn't on my bingo card that I'd be living with my mom and my husband. Well, obviously my husband, but my mom with us at 48. But it's been so wonderful. I mean, like personalities will always, you always have clashing of personalities at time, but it's been such a blessing because I felt cheated with my dad, right? I didn't get enough time with my dad. And now I've had all this time with my mom. And let me tell you, like, she's definitely, like you said earlier, she is a force to be reckoned with. She is a Kamari, but such valuable insight to life itself. And it's been good because it's been really fun because I get to learn more about my family, my Canadian family. So, yeah, I mean, she's hilarious. And it's interesting when we see our parents as just parents, there's that, the dynamic of child and child to parent relationship. And it's, they're correcting you. They're at telling you what to do, if you will. But now it's much more of a like a conversation, much more of a relationship, like a friendship, um, which has been really fun. I mean, I'm so grateful and so blessed. I feel so blessed by that. So,
I mean, I just love this. There comes a time where the relationship dynamic becomes like I'm a human, you're a human, and
Mm.
we're having these conversations together about our past, about our lives, about the spiritual realm, about like all of those like
Mhm.
interesting conversation that help us learn more, not just about our family, but also about ourselves. And I just love that you have this incredible chance to do that with your mom today. And
And I think it's again, it's one of those opportunities that I know that I'll look back on and will just always cherish. Was I was a bit closer to my dad growing up. Uh, so the fact that I'm getting to know my mom in a different way is just, I mean, she's pretty well, for me, she's pretty inspiring, and I wish that I had taken to heart or heeded some of her advice years ago, but that's, you can't go back. So, it's been, I mean, it's fun. It's funny. It's, it's like, sometimes I feel like who's on first? Like what's going on? Oh, what are we doing? What are we talking about? But okay, I'm here for it. So,
amazing, amazing. Lisa, thank you so much for this
oh
conversation.
my goodness,
Thank you so
thank you
much
for
for
having me.
coming.
I appreciate it.
I feel like we've touched on a lot of important points that are our experience of life, like to have these conversation and to have the privilege to have that with women in my family is just so amazing. And I thank you so so much.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
super
thank
emotional right now.
you. No, 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 thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I'm sorry that it took so long for me to like have this sit down with you. But I'm really grateful and I'm really honored, and I hope that um I hope that like we can do it again. But I also hope that, again, sharing whatever experiences I have, like that maybe somebody will glean something from it. So, and thank you for sharing all that you did. You're always so vulnerable, and just I love it. So thank you.
I love you.
I love you
Listeners, thank
too.
you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit that button for following, and you can share with people that you actually that might benefit from this conversation. And if you're looking at the YouTube, which is actually a new YouTube channel, you can actually also hit subscribe. Thank you. I love you. I see you. I feel you. And until our next encounter, take care.